Alright, Sonny's vlog, July the 3rd, 2019. Just one of the things I wanted to reiterate on is some of the founding principles of why this country was founded the way it was, and why certain things in the Bill of Rights were embedded, was to make sure that there were some things that would always be protected, and that the Bill of Rights are considered negative laws. In other words, these are things that the government can't do. And if there's anything that they forgot, the 10th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States basically says, etc., etc. And that we can, if we forgot that, well, here it is too. And then the rights go back to the states, and then eventually back to the people. So some people may not totally understand what that means. It's an initial concept. Well, in the Declaration of Independence, it talks about how the rights, rights by those that were governed. So I mean, I can't think of the exact phrase off the top of my head. The bottom line is the consent of the governed. So I mean, basically, if we say, yeah, you can go ahead and do this, then it's okay. The problem is, we've been bludgeoned over the head for so long to allow the federal government to grow and certain branches to do certain things over the other branches, that we have a very uneven setup of government. For example, especially within the last 100 years, the executive branch has gotten a lot of power that Congress have basically mitigated to the executive branch. One of the things that they pulled back on was the War Powers Act in the 70s to limit Nixon the ability to declare and wage war from the executive branch without the consent of Congress. The problem is, because of the UN, we've been subjugated, our war powers, to coalitions. In other words, we learned from our own follies. For example, the Nuremberg trials basically said, it made it, like General Montgomery had said, that made it illegal to lose a war. Made it a crime to lose a war. So, how they cover their ass up is, we'll do a UN resolution, we'll have them basically be the rubber stamp, so we don't have to bear all the brunt ourselves. And then next thing you know, we've got a whole coalition of several different nations invading a sovereign nation over some stupid bullshit, such as Iraq twice, some of the other shit. I think the only thing that I can remember off the top of my head that the U.S. did mainly by itself was Panama. And that was kind of more of a police action as opposed to an invasion. But I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, check out the documentary, The Panama Deception. It was narrated by Elizabeth Montgomery. Actually, I think like 6 months or a year before she died, the lady that did Bewitched. And there's some very powerful stuff in that film. Like I said, it was in 1992. And what it talked about was some of the atrocities that the American troops did. And Panama was the pretext for the invasion of Iraq. So it was a beta test under Daddy Bush. So those are some issues that need to be addressed, because we haven't had properly declared a war in this country since December the 8th, 1941. Also, under Eisenhower, it's no longer known as the War Department, it's now the Department of Defense. So you put those two factors together, and you clearly see there was an agenda there to try to take any blame off the United States, especially since we were the main superpower that survived the war unscathed. And to top that off, to make sure that eventually, especially beginning under Eisenhower, that our war machine would always be in effect. We would police the world, and we basically dictate terms of what happens to things. It's like what Bastiat said in the law: when goods and services no longer flow out, troops flow in to kind of generally quote that. And I generally agree with that because that's how it works. So again, that's a problem. It needs to be clearly addressed. So I think when it comes to 4th of July, I would highly recommend that people watch the miniseries John Adams with Paul Giamatti and watch that. I mean, you can watch The Patriot, Mel Gibson. Yeah, it'll get you kind of going rah, rah, rah. And there's some excellent points in that film as well. As a matter of fact, I think I may go ahead and use a couple clips out of that for the show Thursday, which I am having a round table on what 4th of July means to them. So, I think we need to realize that we were a very special place, and we were in a very special place to be able to do what we did. Oh, come on. And so, we need to regard that and understand why the 4th of July is so important. It's kind of what Ronald Reagan said. Democrats see every day as April 15th. Republicans see every day as 4th of July. I really wish that was the case. I think anymore Republicans just see whatever Veterans Day is. That's really the only day they seem to actually act like they really give two shits about. But when you start allowing people with subverted agendas, like that city where the gay mayor decide he's going to go put a pride flag up at the Veterans Memorial, take down the POW, NWA, the MIA flag, and put up a pride flag, and the people threw a shit fit about it, which they had every right to, then I think there's something that needs to be addressed. So you know what they did? Oh, he's going to put it up there. Make no mistake. What they're going to do is they're just going to make sure that it's set up to have two flags instead of one, so they can put that damn rainbow flag up there. To me, I think that's the most disgusting flag I think I've ever seen, even more than the Soviet communist flag, is the rainbow flag with the field of stars in it to look like an American flag. To me, it has an affront to everything America stands for. Not to mention, what does it say to our enemies? We're a bunch of pussies and faggots because of the fact that we're ready to be conquered. So anyway, but that's my thing. So everybody have a good 4th of July. Stay out of trouble. And Salam.